Well, actually, Elvis loved the song. That was when he and Priscilla were having their problems, which I met her recently, and she told me that Elvis loved.
For decades, Dolly Parton has been known as the sweetheart of country music, a woman whose voice, heart, and spirit defined an entire era. But behind her radiant smile and kindness lies a storyteller who's seen the darkest sides of fame. Recently, during a private interview that quickly became the talk of Hollywood, Dolly made a confession that left everyone stunned. She finally revealed the 5 most evil actors she ever crossed paths with during her long career, men whose charm masked something far more sinister. While Dolly built her legacy on love, laughter, and generosity, she never shied away from the truth. "You'd be surprised how dark Hollywood can get," she said softly, her voice trembling with both sadness and courage. "Some of those old stars looked like angels on screen, but behind the camera, they were monsters." Insiders say Dolly's revelations came after years of silence, as she decided to open up about the hidden cruelty that haunted Hollywood's golden age. From manipulation and greed to betrayal and abuse of power, the stories she told are as chilling as they are heartbreaking. "She doesn't name names out of spite," one close friend explained. "She's doing it because people deserve to know what really went on behind the glamour, the fear, the control, and the way some of the greatest stars were broken by the very people the world idolized." Dolly's words peeled back the golden curtain, revealing a Hollywood that was beautiful on the surface, but rotten at its core. Dolly Parton has always been a beacon of light. Her warmth, humor, and humility have made her one of the most beloved figures in entertainment history. Yet even she admits that her rise to stardom came with painful lessons. When she first arrived in Hollywood in the late 1960s, fresh from Tennessee, and armed with nothing but a dream, she believed that talent and kindness were enough to survive in show business. What she found instead was a world filled with glitter on the outside and shadows underneath. In those early years, Dolly often attended glamorous parties hosted by the very people she grew up watching in black and white films. These were the legends, the men and women who built Hollywood's golden reputation. But behind their smiles, she began noticing a disturbing pattern. They were powerful, untouchable, she once said in an interview, and they knew it. The first evil actor Dolly spoke about was an icon of the 1950s, a man whose face graced countless movie posters and whose charm captivated millions. To the world, he was the definition of sophistication. To those who knew him privately, he was something else entirely. Dolly described how he used his fame to manipulate and control young actresses, promising them roles in exchange for loyalty and silence. "He could ruin a career with a single phone call," she said, and he loved that kind of power. For a young woman trying to protect her dignity in an industry that often saw women as disposable, this was terrifying. Dolly quickly learned to smile, stay polite, and move on, but she never forgot what she witnessed. Another actor she mentioned was known for his charm and wit, a comedian who made audiences laugh while hiding a dark temper. Dolly recalled watching him humiliate assistants and berate co-stars between takes. He'd turn it off the second the camera started rolling, she said, but the second it stopped, he was a completely different man. Dolly's honesty shocked even her closest fans. She wasn't naming names to seek revenge. She was describing a system, a sickness, that had long been hidden behind bright lights and golden awards. The pain she saw shaped her career forever. It taught her to rely on her instincts, to guard her heart, and to treat people with the respect that Hollywood so often forgot. In the years that followed, Dolly's quiet strength became her shield. She rose above the toxicity, built an empire on compassion, and outlasted nearly everyone who tried to break her. But as she revealed in that interview, the memories of those early days and the evil she saw behind the smiles never truly left her. As Dolly's story unfolded, listeners were caught between disbelief and heartbreak. The way she spoke about those early years didn't sound like the glamorous world fans imagined. It sounded like a battlefield, where charm was a weapon and innocence was a target. "People think Hollywood was magical back then," she said quietly. But sometimes, the more beautiful the face, the darker the heart behind it. One of the 5 men Dolly described was a legendary leading man from the late 1940s, an actor whose name had become synonymous with romance. On screen, he was the perfect gentleman, suave, tender, endlessly devoted. But off camera, Dolly said, he treated women like trophies. She recalled one haunting story shared with her by a friend, a young actress whose career was destroyed because she refused to play by his rules. "He had her blacklisted," Dolly said with a heavy sigh. "One word from him, and she never worked again." Another evil name on Dolly's list was a studio executive who wasn't technically an actor, but who controlled them all. He was the puppet master behind dozens of Golden Age hits, a man who used his position to bend people's lives to his will. Dolly described how this man would pit actors against each other for sport, spreading lies and whispering rumors to break friendships and marriages. "He loved chaos," she said. "It made him feel powerful, and he always smiled while doing it." Perhaps the most chilling story she told, however, was about a beloved comedian, someone America adored for his humor and warmth. "He could make anyone laugh," Dolly recalled, "but when the lights went out, he was cruel." She spoke of assistants who worked around the clock, terrified to make mistakes, and of co-stars who endured verbal abuse in silence because no one dared to speak against him. For Dolly, these experiences weren't just cautionary tales, they were a glimpse into how fame could twist a person's soul. "It's not the fame that's evil," she explained. "It's what fame does to people who never learned kindness in the first place. Hollywood just gives them a bigger stage to show their true selves." Despite witnessing so much ugliness, Dolly never lost her light. Her secret was simple. She refused to let other people's cruelty define her. Instead, she used it as fuel to create a career built on love and truth. Every song she wrote, every role she accepted, was a reflection of the empathy she wished others had shown. "You can't fight darkness with more darkness," she said. "You've got to shine brighter, even when you're surrounded by shadows." By the end of the interview, it was clear that Dolly's revelations weren't about gossip or scandal. They were about survival, about what it means to stay kind in a world that often rewards cruelty. Her courage to speak up wasn't just a reckoning with the past. It was a message to the next generation of artists. Don't let Hollywood change who you are. And as she leaned back in her chair, smiling softly, she added one final haunting truth. Evil doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes it smiles for the camera. For years, Dolly Parton carried these memories quietly, locked away behind her trademark smile. She had seen the best and the worst of Hollywood, but she knew that speaking out during the Golden Age would have destroyed her career before it even began. "Back then, if you told the truth about powerful people, you were done," she admitted. "You'd never work again." And they made sure of it. This was the dark reality of the time, an unspoken system that protected the powerful and silenced the vulnerable. Young actresses, especially those without famous last names or industry connections, often faced impossible choices. They could speak up and risk everything or stay silent and try to survive another day. Dolly chose survival, but she never forgot the pain she witnessed. One of the actors she mentioned in her revelations was known for playing heroes, a man whose name was synonymous with honor and bravery. But Dolly remembered how he used his influence to manipulate contracts, steal credit from others, and destroy careers of anyone who challenged him. "He wore that cowboy hat like he was America's savior," she said bitterly. But behind the scenes, he bullied people just to remind them who was in charge. there was another, a celebrated Oscar-winning actor who was adored by the press for his gentle soul. To the world, he was kindness personified. But to the people who worked under him, he was something else entirely. He smiled for the cameras, Dolly recalled, but when no one was looking, he'd whisper threats in people's ears. If you didn't obey him, you were gone. For Dolly, the hardest part wasn't witnessing cruelty. It was watching good people crumble under its weight. She remembered friends who left the industry, broken by what they endured. Some never recovered. That's why I kept writing songs, she explained. Music was how I stayed sane. It was my way of telling the truth without getting punished for it. In time, Dolly's career took her beyond Hollywood, into country music, where she built her own empire on her own terms. But even there, she carried the lessons of her early years. I learned that silence has a price, she said softly. When you don't speak out, evil thinks it's winning. But when the time is right, you tell your truth. Not for revenge, but for peace. When she finally decided to open up about the 5 most evil actors of Hollywood's golden age, it wasn't about shocking the world. It was about freeing herself. The years had passed. The stars she spoke of were long gone, and the world had changed enough for truth to be heard. Her confession wasn't a scandal. It was a eulogy for a time when fame was worshipped more than humanity. The old Hollywood we all admired wasn't all gold, she said. It was paint, and underneath, some of it was rotten. As her words echoed across the media, younger generations of actors began reaching out, thanking her for her courage. For them, Dolly's story wasn't just about the past. It was a warning and a call for change. She had pulled back the curtain, and there was no putting it back. But the most surprising part of her revelation was yet to come. Because Dolly didn't just name the evil she saw. She also revealed the moment that changed her forever, when one of those actors tried to destroy her, and she found the courage to fight back. Dolly Parton had faced countless battles in her career, but none left a deeper mark than the day one of Hollywood's most powerful men tried to silence her forever. By then, she was already a rising star, admired for her voice, wit, and unapologetic authenticity. She was a young woman from Tennessee who had climbed out of poverty with sheer determination. But in the glittering halls of power, she was still seen as an outsider. And to some, that made her an easy target. The man in question was one of the 5 most evil figures she would later expose, a legend whose reputation for charm and influence made him untouchable. He called her into his office one evening after a meeting, offering her a career-changing opportunity. But when she arrived, the offer turned into something darker. He smiled like a gentleman, Dolly recalled, but the look in his eyes wasn't kind. When she refused his advances, he laughed, and then he threatened her. He said he could make sure no one in this town would ever work with me again, she revealed. He told me I'd go back to singing in bars if I didn't learn how this business really worked. Dolly left that room shaken, but unbroken. I cried that night, she admitted. But the next morning, I got up, fixed my hair, and went right back to work. She knew her voice was her power, and she refused to let fear take that away. In the months that followed, the man kept his word, at least he tried to. Dolly lost opportunities, certain doors quietly closed, and rumors began to swirl. But she did something he never expected. She left Hollywood behind. Instead of chasing their approval, she turned toward her true passion, music. And that's when everything changed. Her first hit records, Jolene and I Will Always Love You, made her a global sensation. Suddenly, the same people who had dismissed her were begging for her attention. Success, she said, with a knowing smile, is the best revenge. Years later, when the man's power faded and his scandals caught up with him, Dolly refused to speak ill of him publicly. "He already punished himself," she said. "That kind of evil eats you from the inside out." But privately, she kept his memory as a reminder, a warning of what unchecked power could do. In that final interview, when she revealed the 5 most evil actors she had known, Dolly's voice was calm, not angry. There was no bitterness, only clarity. "I forgave them all," she said. "Not for them, but for me. Because carrying hate only keeps you tied to their darkness." Her story wasn't just about the corruption of Hollywood's golden age. It was about resilience, forgiveness, and the strength it takes to remain good in a world that rewards cruelty. "People ask me how I stayed so positive all these years," she added with a laugh. "Honey, I just never let the devil rent a room in my heart." Today, as the entertainment world looks back at that glamorous but toxic era, Dolly's honesty stands as a mirror, reflecting not only what was lost, but what can still be learned. Her courage to speak truth without hatred reminds everyone that the brightest stars aren't the ones who shine for fame. They're the ones who shine through darkness, and, as she once said in her unmistakable Southern twang, "Hollywood may have had its E,